Imagine you lived in a time when owning another human being was legal and considered normal. You might wonder, how could such a practice exist? This is where the story of abolitionism begins, an important movement that aimed to end slavery. Abolitionism was a social and political movement primarily active in the 18th and 19th centuries, particularly in Europe and the Americas. Its goal was the immediate emancipation of all slaves and the end of racial discrimination and inequality. This movement arose in response to the widespread practice of slavery, which treated human beings as property to be bought, sold, and exploited for labor. To understand abolitionism, we must first grasp the background of slavery itself. Slavery has existed throughout history in various forms and was deeply entrenched in the economies of many nations during the 18th and 19th centuries. For example, in the United States, the southern states relied heavily on enslaved labor for their agricultural industries, particularly cotton production. This economic dependence made the abolition of slavery a highly contentious and challenging issue. Abolitionists argued passionately against the institution of slavery on moral, religious, and humanitarian grounds. They highlighted the brutal realities of slave life, separation of families, harsh working conditions, and systemic abuse, to sway public opinion against the practice. One prominent abolitionist was Frederick Douglass, a former slave who became a leading figure in the American abolitionist movement. Douglass eloquently spoke about his own experiences as a slave and tirelessly campaigned for the abolition of slavery through speeches, writings, and activism. Transitioning to the challenges faced by abolitionists, we encounter significant opposition from those who benefited economically from slavery, as well as from those who held racist beliefs. Slave owners and their allies argued that slavery was essential for the economy and that slaves were inferior and unable to function as free citizens. These entrenched interests created formidable barriers to the abolitionist cause, leading to heated debates and, in some cases, violent confrontations. Despite these challenges, abolitionists persisted in their efforts, forming organizations, writing pamphlets and newspapers, and engaging in legal and political battles. In Britain, for example, William Wilberforce and his allies in Parliament fought for decades to pass laws that eventually led to the abolition of the transatlantic slave trade in 1807 and slavery itself throughout the British Empire in 1833. In the United States, the abolitionist movement gained momentum over decades, culminating in the Civil War from 1861 to 1865. The war ultimately led to the abolition of slavery with the passage of the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution in 1865. This monumental achievement was the result of decades of struggle and sacrifice by abolitionists and the broader anti-slavery movement. In conclusion, abolitionism was a transformative movement that sought to eradicate the deeply entrenched institution of slavery. It faced numerous challenges, including economic interests, racial prejudices, and legal obstacles. But through perseverance and activism, abolitionists were able to bring about significant social change. Their efforts not only liberated millions from bondage, but also laid the groundwork for future struggles against racial discrimination and inequality.